a talk on how to publish in high impact journal. I would like to call on Dr. Saheed Jimoh. He's going to put us through how to publish our papers. This is Miriam Loguleko will be our moderator. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Miriam Loguleko. I work as an assistant lecturer at the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta in Nigeria. And I'm currently on my PhD at the University of Bristol in United Kingdom. So I am the moderator, and our presenter, Dr. Saeed, will be speaking to us on how to publish in high impact journals. So I will start by introducing the presenter, Dr. Saheed Jimoh, who is a grassland scientist. He received his PhD from the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Dr. Saeed enjoys generating new ideas and researching visible solutions to broadly relevant challenges in grassland ecology and management. He has been engaged in interdisciplinary, leading to publication of 25 journal articles in local and international periodicals, one book chapter, and numerous conference proceedings. He is passionate about and open to collaboration on research concepts that promote sustainable agriculture and the environment at all scales. Dr. Saeed has been a reviewer for several reputable journals, including the Journal of Environmental Management, Rangeland Ecology and Management, and the Journal of Applied Ecology. He is an associate editor for the African Journal of Range and Forest Science, and the founder and lead consultant at LeadFacts Limited, an educational firm that provides research training and technical support for new early career researchers and academic institutions. Over to you, Dr. Saeed. You can go ahead and give your presentation.
Good afternoon from Nigeria, and thank you, Dr. Yasiri, for the invitation. And I also thank Ms. Miriam for the introduction. Permit me to share my slide. I'm very glad to be here this afternoon to share my experience on the topic, how to publish in high impact journals. The agenda for the presentation is as follows. I'm likely to skip the about me because Miriam has talked about that. So we'll briefly look at the introduction, what high impact scholarly journals are, and also move down straight to the tips for publishing in high impact scholarly journals. So this a summary of me concerning my academic career. Now the introduction. Now, when we talk about publication, as scientists and as researchers, it's important that we publish our research. But we have different ways of communicating research findings to the world. For example, we can publish our research findings as a journal article. We can publish the same as a conference paper. We can publish the same as a book chapter. And interestingly, more in recent times, we can also publish in preprints, which allow us to take credit for our work early on, so that the discovery of new findings can be related to our names. However, publishing your research in top-ranked journals is tasking, but not impossible. Yes, it is very tasking because you need to take note of a lot of things. You need to follow a lot of rules. But the interesting part is that it is not impossible, provided we are interested in giving in the effort that it needs. To increase your chances of publishing your work in top-ranked journals, the research must be original and inspire further research and discussion. Yes, for any top-ranked journal to consider your work for publication, it must be original, and it must have the potential to stimulate further discussion within the research community. For example, your findings must be able to inspire other researchers to want to do research in that direction as well. So high impact journals, what are they? Simply, these are journals with highly cited published articles across the academic spectrum. Yeah, there are a lot of indicators that are used to rank journals, such as the impact factor, such as the site score, and other indexes. However, the impact factor is the most common index that is used to rank journals. So when you say a journal is high impact, it implies that that journal you're referring to has, a high level of being cited among other journals. For example, impact factor is usually calculated based on the last 2 years, whereby the number of citations received by a journal is divided by the number of articles published by the journal within that same period of time. And that's why you see that journals such as Nature, such as Science, such as Cell, the Lancet, they have very high impact factors because those journals, the articles published in those journals are top rank in the sense that they get cited by other peers, very much. Now, for you to publish, what are the tips to publish in high impact journals? For you to publish in high impact journals, while you are doing your research, you need to ask yourself a few questions. And what are the questions you need to ask yourself? Number one is that, have you done something new while doing your research? For example, when I was doing my master's research, it's not entirely new in the world, but it was entirely new in, let's say, this part of Africa. So I knew I was going to have something good, and my supervisor was very much interested and encouraging me. So that gave me a zeal that, yes, I'm doing something that is novel, you understand, although within the area where my institution is located. So if you want to publish, and it ended up in a very good journal. So if you want to publish in high impact factor journal, you need to ask yourself, what you are doing, is it new? As we all know, you can do a novel research and you can do a repeat study. So repeat study is not the kind of research that top ranked journals usually do consider. Then the second one is that, is something challenging about your work? For example, does your work challenge the status quo of what is known about the existing knowledge in your field? For example, do you find out that most of the results you have actually contradicts what is known, or the existing knowledge in your field? And do you have, a solid argument to back it up? Now, while you are doing your research, you also need to ask yourself, will your results influence other researchers? If your paper get the chance to get published in top ranked journals, is it going to stimulate further research? Will it inspire other researchers to develop, ideas to extend whatever you have found out? So that's another interesting feature of our papers considered in top ranked journals. Then the next one is that, is your research robust? By robustness, it means that, is your research conducted at a local scale? For example, you'll have come about, many papers that they use meta-analysis on a global scale. So when you talk about robust, it's actually referring to what is the geographical context of your paper. Sometimes you see researchers come together across, for example, in my field, you see researchers come together to measure the level of carbon sequestration in grasslands, across the world. You have sites in Africa, you have sites in Europe, you have sites in North America. Then you collect data across all the sites. And that is what led to, some, research consortiums such as the Nutrient Network, the LTER network. So those networks, they conduct, a robust research that, it's going to generate a big data. And another interesting thing is that inferences or conclusions drawn from such research, will be relevant, to all the study sites. So it leads to, generation of research findings that can be applied across, many geographical locations. Now, if your answer to the above questions is yes, then you should proceed to prepare your research findings for sharing in top-ranked journals. But before I move ahead, I would also like to clarify that in different fields, top-ranked journals, are different. It implies that there's a kind of relativity in it. For example, the journals you consider as top-ranked in grassland science are not the same you consider the top-ranked journals in, animal behavior and welfare, or for people in ecology, or for people in environmental science, or for people in, medical science. So there's a kind of, specificity when you are talking about top-ranked journals. So to learn about top-ranked journals, you need to check online for the journals that are in the top-ranked position. Another way you can actually, identify top-ranked journals is whether they are in the first quartile or second quartile or third quartile or the fourth quartile. So usually the journals in the first quartile are also, considered as being very good journal, even though they might not have a very high impact factor. But the high impact factor is the major, index that is used to, to rank journals. Now, the second area you need to consider is that you need to make your manuscript publication worthy. How do you make your manuscript publication worthy? Number one, the title and abstract. You must have a concise title and an abstract that, that conveys the message in your research. Your title should not be, extensively long, because it can also put off the reader. It can put off even the editor. You should have a title that will be catchy, short and concise, and your abstract should be detailed, so that even without reading your full text, one can easily understand, the research you have done and the implications of the findings you have presented. Then your scientific message should be clear. As a researcher, we all need to learn about academic writing. You must write in a way that your thoughts can be easily conveyed in a logical manner. That will aid understanding by anybody that is reading your paper. You should not write in a way that it will be very difficult to understand, for example, by using, very big grammar. No, that's not what you need. In fact, when you look at top-ranked journals or articles published in top-ranked journals, you see that they use simple English. So you need to be very clear when you are conveying your scientific message. Then your manuscript formatting. Usually, the formatting for top-ranked journals is usually very difficult and tedious. So you need to take the time to follow the manuscript formatting. For example, many of those journals, after the introduction, instead of you to have material and methods as you have in regular journals, some of them after the introduction, the next thing you see is the result. The next thing you see is the discussion, and the method will now come in the last section. So you have to follow that format or any other format that is given by the journal you intend to submit to. Then, what is your research story? You must be able to tell your story. Writing is, academic writing involves, knowing how to write your story, knowing how to tell your story. If your story is very interesting and captivating, it will keep the reader. Then, the fact that your paper will first be evaluated by the editor. So if you don't have a very good story, the editor might consider that your paper is not worthy of sending out for review, and therefore, desk reject it. So you need to learn about how to write a very good and interesting story. And a very simple way of learning about this is pick up the articles that are in the top-ranked journals in your field and try to read, familiarize yourself with the writing style. Then over time, you would also be able to, develop this skill conveniently and easily. Another point is that when you intend to present your findings in top-ranked journals, you need excellent figures to convey your findings. Why? Because many readers will skip to the figure section to understand your findings. For example, anybody that picks up your paper in the top-ranked journals would want to look at what is the finding, because that's the selling point. That what did you find out? So you need to use a very good and clear figure. For example, the color combination, you need to take note of this. The way you label your figures, there shouldn't be too much letterings in the figure, such that it puts the readers off, and other things like that. So you need to make sure that your figure is clear and excellent and good looking, so that it will attract the readers. Then you also need to write an effective results section. As I mentioned earlier, your result is very important, because that is where you tell the editor, at least at the point of submission, that's where you tell the editor what you find out in your research. So the result section should be clear, easy to understand, reveal interesting findings, and the corresponding statistical significance. Yes, you should not forget to include the statistical significance in your results. And you should also write in a way that clearly conveys your message. Where you have novel findings that seems to be unusual, present novel findings under separate subtitles and duplicate the same for the corresponding figure legend to easily understand the data. When you present novel findings under separate subtitles, it makes such findings easily identifiable. and the corresponding figure also, you use a similar title for the corresponding figure, so that once a reader sees the the section, you can easily relate the data presented in the result section in the figure or in the table. Then integrate your results with the discussion, ensuring the two corresponds. Yes, the two must tally. You don't discuss out of context. You also need to take note of that. You need to ensure that whatever you are discussing in the discussion section is not outside the scope of your research. Even if it is relevant to your research, once you did not collect data on a particular variable, you are not expected to mention it in your result. So you must integrate your results and discussion perfectly. Now, the next point is that you need to mind your references. Why? References are very important. And, expectedly, when you are pushing out your paper to the top-ranked journals, you should expect that every aspect of your paper will be scrutinized. The reason is because top-ranked journals are always, they are always concerned about their reputation. So for anything they want to put out, they will always like to ensure that everything is in order for everything they want to put out. So number one is that you cite the main scientific publications that led to the research ideas in your paper. This is very important. For example, the idea that led to the research you are presenting. For example, if you found that idea in a particular paper, you should not forget to cite that paper, because that is the source of the idea. And that will also help you to give credit to the person that that gave you the idea in the first instance. Then you need to understand the academic material you are citing in relation to the citation context. Yes, you don't cite a paper that is more relevant, or you don't cite a section of paper that is more relevant in the method section, in the introduction section. That would really show that you have not done your homework well. So any paper you are citing, you must be able to defend the citation that, yes, it is relevant. In one of my papers, I once had an encounter with a reviewer who was questioning the citations I used for a particular sentence. So I had to explain the reason why I used the citation, including why several citations was used for that particular sentence. So if I do not understand, or I did not take note of that while writing, that may be a reason for rejection of that paper, because it would give the impression that all other citations were also abruptly included without taking note of the contextual importance. Then you should minimize self-citation. It is very important. If you want to publish in a top-ranked journal, you don't go in your paper, maybe you have 40, 50 references, and you already have about 20 self-citations. No, it doesn't speak well of you. It will be as if you're only trying to sell yourself. Yes, it is not that you cannot use self-citation, but you should make sure that it is minimal, so that it will not affect the chances of your paper getting accepted for publication. Then you should not, when you want to publish in top-ranked journals too, I've also noticed this, that the citations are not too many. Why? Because they are much more interested in what? Quality over quantity. So it's not all about citing 100 papers, citing 200 papers. No, you should only cite the papers that are relevant to your work, and also cite in the appropriate places. Then you should not cite too many papers from the same region, because it will show that your review of literature is skewed. And it could also imply that the findings from your research, is more related. It could also imply that the findings from your research is more related to a particular region. It's more related to a particular region. Then acknowledge everyone who contributed to your study, including advisors, sponsors, funders, donors, and suppliers of materials. So you need to acknowledge everybody that has contributed to your study, whether they gave you materials, whether they provide technical support for you while you are in the field. Once those people are not qualified to be an author of your paper, then you should do well to acknowledge them. And one of the important reasons for this is that when you acknowledge, because when you try to publish in a top-ranked journal, it is expected that your work is robust and it's a very nicely set up experiment. So it is expected that a lot of hands will be involved. So you not acknowledging might imply that you are not giving credit to those who have assisted you in the course of the experiment. More importantly, to publish in the top-ranked journal, you need to work in a team. To produce high-quality research papers, you need to work in a good team, yes, because there is strength in diversity. So when you work in a team, you'll be able to come up with several ideas that can now be galvanized together to produce an interesting paper. And that is the case for many of the top-ranked journals you get published. I've seen a paper that has up to about 5,000 citations. I think that was published in Physics. So you can imagine the number of sites that are involved in such paper. And that is why such kind of papers will get accepted in highly ranked journals, because the depth of the research is very rigorous. And besides, working alone is time consuming and does not frequently lead to the crafting of excellent papers that merit publication in high impact journals. I'm not saying you cannot publish in a high impact journal if you work as a sole author, but definitely it will be time consuming, because the volume of work you need to do for you to get your paper published in top ranked journals will require that you need helping hands, both in terms of field work and other aspects of the research. The next tip is that you need to write a good cover letter. Excuse me. Now you have completed your research and you have written up your findings into a paper. Now, at the point of submission, you need to craft a cover letter. The cover letter is very important because that is where you give the editor of the journal the impression about your paper. That is the first point where the editor will decide whether to desk reject your paper or to proceed with it. So start your cover letter by highlighting your paper, how your paper fits the journal scope. This is very important. If you have done a research in animal welfare and behavior and you are submitting to an environmental journal, it is out of scope, it will be rejected. So that's one thing you need to take note of. More importantly, also you need to consider, there are some journals that are broad in scope and there are some that are narrow. Most top-ranked journals are broad in scope. But even at that, you still need to be sure that your research finding, fits the journal scope. Next, provide additional background information that cannot be accommodated in your abstract. Yes, your abstract is limited to a certain number of words, maybe 150, maybe 200, maybe 300. But in your cover letter, you have the opportunity to provide additional background. For example, what led, to doing the research and why the research is important and why the findings is also, important. So those kind of information, you can include them in the cover letter to increase your chances of getting the paper sent out for review by the editorial team. Briefly explain the importance of the research question in your paper and why your novel finding is exciting. Yes, even if you have got the best findings or a very good finding in your paper and you fail to mention it in your cover letter, it could be a reason for desk rejection. Because the editor would expect that you would mention everything that is important in your research in the cover letter. And that is what will trigger him to want to consider taking a look at the full text of your paper before deciding on whether to proceed with it or to reject it. And don't forget to tell the editor about any potential controversy or, sorry, there was a typo there, or conflict of interest. So if you have any potential, conflict or any potential issue that may have, influenced the findings in your research, so you need to tell the editor about this. And do not include abstract content in your cover letter. Yeah, do not duplicate, because it's possible that the editor might want to compare and contrast your abstract and your cover letter. And once a high level of duplication is found there, you might think the cover letter is not well written. And the impression that you cannot write a cover letter well might also imply that your paper will not be well written and, may not worth the effort and time, to send it out for review. And nowadays, journal acceptance rate is getting low and low, even in regular journals, let alone in top-ranked journals. So they're always finding a way of, cutting down the number of papers they will consider for publication. Then do not include the past achievements in your lab and any other irrelevant information. You do not need to include that maybe your lab got an award in your cover letter. There's no need. The editor does not need to know about that. The editorial team does not need, any information that is more or less personal to your research team. You should only focus on information that would, help sell your article to the editor, to convince the editor that yes, this paper is worth considering for publication in their journal. And lastly, if you are yet to publish in a high impact journal in your field and you think your research findings might have a chance, don't be afraid to try. I have a philosophy. I always like to, it's obvious you cannot always publish every of your article in a top ranked journal. But I have, I have a philosophy that I always like to start my submission from top ranked journals. The reason is that even if my paper gets rejected, I'm going to get, useful comment that will help me improve the article. And where the paper is given a chance to be sent out for review, and eventually get published, then you see that there's no harm in trying. So I conclude by saying if your paper is not accepted eventually, there are chances that you will get suggestions and comments that could help improve your paper before submitting it to another journal. Thank you very much for your listening pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insightful presentation on how to get your manuscript or your research published in high impact journal. In fact, today is, you just, explain how the impact factor is being calculated. I've never thought about it. I just know I used to read impact factor and impact factor. Let me hand over to the moderator and then I come back to my question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Saheed, for delivering such an educative presentation and for sharing tips on how to publish. I like that part where you mentioned some questions that we need to ask ourselves before deciding on publishing. So I already have some questions for you. I'm still going to ask my own later if time permits. So to start with a question here from, okay. How do you deal with reviewers that believe in status quo, like reviewers that do not believe your result should challenge an existing result?
Okay, well, that's a very interesting one, and I think I always like that kind of situation. I always believe that academia is an intellectual engagement, and interestingly, you will not see the person you are engaging with. So you only need to use your words. Now, in that situation, the best thing to do is to drag the editor into the conversation. You need to call the attention of the editor, when you are sending back your rebuttal letter. Yes, you will respond to the reviewer, using the available evidence at your disposal. But now, when you are sending back your paper, you will now need to note in to the editor that a so issue has been raised, and you believe it is not worthy of being raised. Do you understand? Then you give reasons why you are the one that is right. Do you understand? I give two examples. There was a senior, a senior academic that was speaking one day. I was listening to him. He's in life sciences. So he said after the reviewer reviewed his paper, it was sent back. Then the reviewer challenged him that what he has done is wrong, is out of place. He now educated the reviewer in his response. You understand? Pointing at several indicators. And he said on the long run, the reviewer, because he is being fair, he actually acknowledged that he was wrong in the first instance. But not all reviewers will want to succumb that they are wrong. but it is obvious that we are all human.